User Guide, NuEVI and NuRAD, Firmware version 1.6.1, Berglund Instruments, Johan Berglund, March 29, 2023. Origins. The electric valve instrument was invented back in the early 1970s by Nyle Steiner. The first production instruments were using mechanical switches in a handset connected to an analog synthesizer module, and they were sold from 1975 to 1979 by the Steiner-Parker Company. When the company had dissolved, the instrument was produced by Crumar. In the mid-80s, Steiner designed and built a number of instruments with a more complex synthesizer and touch sensing for keys. They were referred to as Steiner phones and came in both brass and woodwind variety. In 1987, a new type of EVI was licensed and sold by Akai. This new version, together with its woodwind counterpart, released at the same time, the EWI, was using touch sensing for the finger controls and a programmable synth module capable of sending MIDI for controlling other synthesizers. The Akai EVI was discontinued due to not selling as well as the EWI, that is still made by Akai in new incarnations. For a while, Nyle Steiner did conversions of the current model EWIs into EVIs, until 1998 when he started building and selling the MIDI EVI he had developed. The MIDI EVI was built to work as a controller for MIDI-equipped synthesizers with no sound synthesis capabilities of its own. For several years, this has been the controller instrument of choice for EVI players, even when the newer EWIs got alternative EVI fingering settings. In recent years, the MIDI EVI has become hard to come by. Steiner has moved on to many other projects and interests, and so very few new EVIs are being built. In 2012, he posted a YouTube video demonstrating a prototype for an Arduino-based EV that people could build themselves. In 2017, it was still unclear when the Arduino EVI kit would be available, as the only available EVI would be in kit form and not available as a pre-built instrument. Some EVI players start to get a bit concerned about the future of the EVI. With no new instruments being built, the EVI would eventually die. In hope to prevent this, EVI player Steve Anderson initiated a project aiming to create a new EVI. After teaming up with Johan Berglund, moving forward with the project, the new EVI was born. As popularity of the new EVI grew, EWI players started to get in touch, wanting an EWI counterpart to the new EVI. When development was initiated for this new EWI, a number of factors pointed to the RAD EWI as a suitable version to modernize and build for people. The original RAD MIDI EWI was made by Nyle Steiner in 2004 for saxophone and EWI player Michael Brecker. The RAD EWI featured a new, radical redesign, putting the keys for the left and right hands side by side and having handles attached so it could be played without the use of a neck strap. Michael Brecker was very pleased with this new controller and used it on tour. No additional RAD EWIs were made though, and this controller could have become just this one-off mythical beast. Development of the NuRAD was done in parallel with building new EVIs, and while it took more than a year to get it all ready, some ideas for the NuRAD would also be available as optional features for the new EVI, the new byte in particular. The new byte is based on the byte sensor in the vintage Steiner Masters Touch system, and rather than measuring capacitance between strips of metal, it senses the air pressure in a closed system where squeezing or bending the mouthpiece will alter the pressure. As an improvement over the original, a pressure valve is added, allowing for equalization to ambient air pressure. Here's the table of contents. It's located on page 4. It'll give you a clear list of topics so you can find things easily inside the manual. Instrument overview is basically a map showing you externally where all of the features of the instrument are located. The instrument overview of the EVI is found on page 5, and the NuRAD is found on page 6. Holding and controls. The way you are holding your instrument will affect both comfort and performance. For both the new EVI and the NuRAD, there are a couple of things to note regarding this. One common mistake, for example, is to place the thumb controlling the octaves just on one roller at a time, when the correct octave positions are between rollers, touching two at a time. Getting these things right from the beginning will help getting you faster to the point where the instrument feels like an extension of yourself in your musical expression. The NuEVI canister is held with the left hand in a way that the thumb is more or less vertical onto the rollers. Index fingers should be free to touch and release the fourth valve, aka K4, aka the half octave key that is the black arc in front of the main body. The other fingers grip around the canister without touching the fourth valve. Right-hand thumb is placed between the two pitch bend pads and on top of the vibrato lever. Make sure it's not too easy to be touching the pitch benders inadvertently while playing, yet not too hard to reach the pitch benders when you want to use them. Loosen the screws and adjust if needed. Be careful not to over-tighten as the benders are plastic. In some cases, there is an additional pad behind the thumb lever. That's an extension of the extra controller sensor routing. Usually the extra controller is actuated with the lip sensor, but if using the optional mouthpieces available, the lip sensor is removed and instead this pad can be used. If the standard byte type mouthpiece is installed, both lip sensor and the touchpad can be used. The NuRAD can be used either with a neck strap or with handles. The handles can be removed if using a neck strap. To remove the handle, put the NuRAD upside down on your lap or on a soft surface. Snap the handle out of the slot in the back of the instrument. Then slide the handle out of first one side, then the other side. Note the way it is oriented for when you decide to put it back. The handles bend down a bit at the sides. To reinstall the handle, start with the sides, then snap it in place in the slot. When holding the NuRAD, either with or without the handles, preferably use an angle of about 45 degrees out from the body. This makes the balance right, and it also reduces the possibility of liquid, spittle, going onto your instrument body. Like the NuEVI, the pitch benders should be adjusted so that they are easily reached when playing, but not easily touched by accident. As the hand is moving around more on the NuRAD reaching for keys, the benders usually need to be placed a bit further away from the thumb. The mouthpiece has three sensors. The primary one is the breath pressure sensor. It controls note on-off and the continuous control value for breath sent to the synthesizer. The breath sensor system is of the closed kind. That means no air is flowing through the instrument when it is played. Instead, you let air slip out by the sides of the mouthpiece when you're blowing into it. The second mouthpiece sensor is the byte sensor. This is configurable to provide byte vibrato like on the Akai iwi or to control portamento glide. A slight bite or bend to the mouthpiece will increase the glide time. When released, it goes back to a 0 or no glide. Third, there's an extra controller sensor on top of the mouthpiece. This is a lip sensor that is touch sensitive, and it can be set to control modulation, growl, or sustain hold. If the NuByte system is installed, standard on NuRAD and on most NuEVI from late 2022 and forward, make sure to press the valve below the byte sensor tube every time you pick up your instrument to play. This is especially important if you're using the byte sensor for portamento control. The system is sensitive to factors as ambient air pressure and temperature, so pressing the valve button before a playing session ensures the pressure level in the system is right and the byte response is as accurate as possible. After a couple minutes of playing in normal room temperature, the pressure is slightly higher due to air pressure expansion when the mouthpiece is heated by body temperature. Therefore, the calibrated threshold setting in the portamento adjustment menu is set a bit above the pre-warming up reading, allowing it to rise a bit when warmed up without going over the threshold activating the portamento. The byte sensor LED is a good tool for monitoring the byte. If you press the valve before the session, but after a minute of playing the LED is glowing faintly, even if you are not applying byte pressure or bending to the mouthpiece, you should raise the threshold setting for the portamento slightly. See Adjustments section. On the NuEVI, the right hand has controls both on top of the instrument and on the bottom. Top side, there are three main valves, -2, -1, and -3 semitones. 3 trill keys, +2, +1, and +4 semitones. A special key between two of the trill keys for chord and interval functions, and a configurable pinky key. The keys are all activated by touch. On the bottom, there are two touch-sensitive pitch bend plates behind and in front of the thumb. They are proportional and send pitch bend up and down in response to how much you let your thumb press against them. Between the pitch bend pads, there is a vibrato lever. This also sends pitch bend control to your synthesizer, but in a manner focused on vibrato. The vibrato lever senses position change. A forward movement triggers a slight pitch bend down, followed by a return to 0 when the movement stops. The movement back will then trigger a slight pitch bend up, followed by a return to 0 when the movement stops. This creates a very violin-like vibrato in a way that will feel natural to the player. A slight shaking hand motion back and forth with your thumb kept on the lever will produce this. The left hand controls octaves in the fourth valve, perfect fifth, -5 semitones. Octaves are controlled using the thumb rollers. Let your thumb rest between two rollers. Rotate your hand while holding the canister and let your thumb move along the arc of the rollers to change octaves. Octaves go from -3, left thumb of leftmost roller but not touching it, to -2, touching only the leftmost roller, -1 between the first two rollers, and all the way up to +3 between the two last rollers. Your index finger controls the fourth valve, -5 semitones. On the NuRAD, there is a similar but slightly different setup. Top side, there are 3 main keys, 3 pinky keys, a side key, and a special key consisting of 2 keys to be touched simultaneously to activate for chord and interval functions. On the bottom, there are 2 pitch bend pads and a lever like on the NuEVI, but for NuRAD, it can be useful to have the lever control portamento instead of vibrato. Left-hand top controls are 3 main keys, a bis key, 2 standard pinky keys, 1 configurable pinky key, and a configurable side key called the mod key. Octaves are controlled using the thumb rollers on the bottom side. Let your thumb rest between 2 rollers. Swipe your thumb up and down over the rollers to change octaves. The NuRAD and NuEVI has 2 main ways of connecting to synthesizers and computers. The first is using the standard DIN MIDI out jack, connecting using a standard MIDI cable to the MIDI end of a hardware synth or computer MIDI interface. The second way is by using the micro USB port on the side of the NuRAD or the NuEVI. Using a standard micro USB charge/sync cable, you can connect the controller to any computer or MIDI USB host hardware supporting class-compliant MIDI over USB. The instrument will be recognized by your system as NuRAD MIDI or NuEVI MIDI. Using a Lightning to USB camera adapter, you can even connect your NuRAD or NuEVI directly to an iPad or iPhone and use it with soft synth apps. The micro USB connection will also power the NuRAD and the NuEVI when the battery switch is in the backmost position, battery power off. The low power requirement of the NuRAD and the NuEVI make it possible to run it from any computer, USB port, USB charger, or even from your iPad, but please use quality chargers and don't put your instrument at risk. Mind that switching between USB power and battery power will switch the controller off and on again. NuRAD model also features a 3.5mm mono jack for supplying breath pressure CV to analog synths. Breath CV is 0 to 5 volts and is produced by the Teensy microcontroller with a fast 0.5 millisecond update interval. Breath threshold and max adjustment settings do have effect on this output, as it is not coming directly from the sensor. NuEVI CV and NuEVI Plus has 2 3.5mm mono jacks in front that will provide 1 volt octave pitch CV and 0 to 10 volt breath CV, your rack levels. Tuning settings for the pitch CV are found in the Extras menu. Depending on your model, you may have either a battery holder for AAA or AA batteries or a built-in LiPo power system. To monitor the battery power, the battery voltage will be indicated top right in the display when the main menu is activated. Values over 4.9 volts will indicate that the instrument is powered over USB, and below that it will indicate it as battery voltage. Normal voltage for a set of new alkaline batteries will be about 4.6 volts. The value will drop as these batteries are used, giving a hint of the current battery condition. Below 3.8 volts, they are due to be replaced, and the indicator will say BATLOW, battery low. If you are using NiMH rechargeable batteries, or the optional LiPo built-in rechargeable battery, change the battery type settings in the Extras menu to the corresponding type. This will set the right threshold value for battery low indication, 3.6 volts for the NiMH and 3.7 volts for the LiPo. Going into the About menu, you will also see the set battery type and a rough approximation of remaining battery percentage. To replace alkaline or NiMH batteries, make sure that the NuEVI or NuRAD is switched off and disconnected from USB or DIN MIDI. Then unscrew the frontmost thumb screw on top of the controller and loosen the one on the back of the battery compartment slightly. Slide the lid forward and lift it off the controller. Replace the batteries, 3 AAA, 3 AA's, depending on model, alkaline or NiMH, and slide the lid back into place. Get the front thumb screw in place first, then tighten both screws. Only finger gripping power should be applied. Do not use pliers or similar tools, or you will most certainly scratch the plastics of your instrument. For the LiPo system, here's the deal. First of all, LiPo batteries can really be nasty if you do bad stuff to them. So don't ever puncture or otherwise put the LiPo cell in any kind of extreme situation with heat, water, fire, etc. Now this cell used in the NuEVI is small, 1500 milliampere hour, 3.7 volts, and it has protection against overvoltage, short circuit, and undervoltage, and we are charging it with a relatively small current, less than 430 milliampere. So normal use should be all safe, and of course the LiPo cell should be recycled in a proper way if for any reason replaced or retired, not ever just thrown in a bin. With the LiPo battery solution installed, the NuEVI or the NuRAD has 3 positions on the power slide switch instead of 2. Original version used LP1 setting in the Extras battery type for correct representation in the display. Positions are: leftmost position indicates power on from battery, battery time 20 plus hours. Mid position indicates power off, battery charge when USB is connected to USB power adapter, 500 milliampere or higher, charges to 80% in 3.5 hours, 100% in 5.5 to 6 hours. The red LED in the battery compartment is lit until the battery is fully charged. Rightmost position, battery off, power on from the USB if connected. No charging, low power consumption. As of late March 2023, there is also a revised version of the LiPo wiring for charger and power switch. The main advantage of this is having one of the switch positions controlling power to the wireless board if installed. It can also charge independent of switch setting, but the low current draw USB only power mode is no longer available. If you have this configuration in your controller, make sure to use LP2 setting in battery type menu. The switch positions for the revised version are leftmost position, power on, wireless on, mid position, power on, wireless off, and the rightmost position, power off. Models with AAA or AA battery holders, the power switch has 2 positions, left for battery power and right for USB power if connected. To simplify configuration, the NuRAD and the NuEVI have been equipped with an OLED display and 4 navigation buttons. The middle buttons are menu/back, left, and enter, right, and the buttons above and below are the buttons for up and down selection. When not used for configuration or patch viewing, the display will be shut off to conserve power. Pressing Menu will activate the display and the main menu. A flashing cursor will indicate items, and Enter will select the indicated item. Menu items directly controlling a setting will trigger a square being shown on the right in the display, with the adjustable value flashing inside. Press up and down to select the desired value, and then press Enter or Menu to select that value and store it in non-volatile memory. The controller will remember this setting even if it is switched off. To make a temporary change that will not be stored, leave the menu open with the value flashing. After a while, the menu will shut off and the setting will not be stored. Transpose. This menu item allows you to transpose the instrument up or down 12 semitones. Factory default transposition is C. Octave. This menu item changes the octave transposition of the instrument. Values go from -3 to +3, with 0 being the factory default. MIDI channel. This menu item selects the active MIDI channel 1 through 16 for both DIN MIDI and USB MIDI. Factory default is MIDI channel 1. Polyplay. In Polyplay menu, you configure everything having to do with polyphonic playing functions. Here you select which type of harmonization or which rotator setup will be activated by touching/holding the mod key on the NuRAD or the pinky key on the NuEVI, and then touching the special keys. Deactivate by just touching special keys. Off indicates disables all special key functionality, including parallel chord, slur sustain, slur sostenuto, and sub-octave functions. See special key section. MGR indicates major gospel root, a gospel type triad voicing. MGD, major gospel dominant. Same as MGR, but with a dominant on the 5 instead of an inversion of the root. MA9 indicates major add 9, pop style add 9 harmonization. MND indicates minor Dorian, a jazz type minor. MNA indicates minor Aeolian, a classical minor. MNH indicates minor 4-voice hip, a more hip Dorian minor. FWC, 4-way close, old school block chord harmony with additional options further down in the Polyplay menu. RTA indicates rotator A, RTB indicates rotator B, RTC indicates rotator C. Polyplay HMZ key selects the key you are playing in for the key-based harmonizations. Polyplay OTF key enables on-the-fly key change for key-based harmonizers. To change on the fly while playing, finger the key, not blowing, and briefly lift your thumb off the rollers when in octave 2 or higher. Key change on the fly will not be stored when powered off. Polyplay HMZ limit limits the number of voices to be played, starting elimination from lowest note and up. Applies to key-based harmonizations only, not rotator, parallel chord, or slur sustain. Polyplay FWC type. Type of block chord for the 4-way close harmonization, 6, minor 6, 7th, or minor 7. Polyplay FWC lock H. Lock hands, double melody, adds another melody note 1 octave down for the 4-way close harmonizations, off and on. Polyplay FWC drop 2. Drop 2 moves the second note, the one below the melody note, 1 octave down for the FWC, off on. Polyplay priority sets which note will get priority when playing mono patches. Sounds really great to layer a mono patch with a poly patch for use with the polyplay functions. High will play the melody note as the mono lead, and low will play the rotated note or the last note of other poly modes. Polyplay rotator A, rotator B, rotator C. This last section of settings, the Polyplay menu, is for the 3 rotators. They create a 3-note chord using the melody note, a fixed interval parallel note, and a third note taken from a rotating selection of 4 notes. For every new note triggered, the rotation is advanced 1 step, and a new combination of notes is played. For each of the 3 selectable rotator setups, you can configure the fixed interval with rotator X parallel and the 4 intervals to be rotated for the third note with rotator X ROT1 or rotator X ROT4, where X represents rotators A through C. Setting an interval to 0 disables the note output for that interval. For the rotated intervals, this also means it is skipped, moving on to the next note. This means you can have rotation between only 2 or 3 notes instead of 4, or create a set interval or chord with no rotation. Setup BR. Menu for settings related to breath control. Setup BR Breath CCA sets the MIDI CC to be sent to represent the breath data. Off indicates no breath CC data is sent. MW indicates breath data is sent as CC1, mod wheel. BR indicates breath data is sent as CC number 2. Breath is the factory default. VL indicates breath data is sent on CC number 7. Volume. EX indicates breath data is sent as CC number 11. Expression. MW plus indicates high resolution breath data is sent on CC1 and CC33, high resolution mod wheel. BR plus indicates high resolution breath data is sent on CC2 and CC34, high resolution breath. VL plus indicates high resolution breath data is sent on CC7 and CC39, high resolution volume. EX plus indicates high resolution breath data is sent on CC11 and CC43, high resolution expression. CF indicates breath data is sent on CC74, cutoff filter. UNO indicates breath data is sent on CC number 20 for use with the IK Multimedia UNO synth. Take note, high-resolution MIDI is very often not supported in the receiving end, example being synths or DAWs. It also uses more MIDI bandwidth. In most cases, you're better off with the regular CC signal. In most cases where smoothing is not implemented in the receiving end, high-resolution CC can be a way of getting less stepping in the filter control. As an example, the MIDI brute gets stepping in the sound when the filter cutoff is controlled with aftertouch, but a smooth sound when the filter is controlled by high-resolution modulation wheel data. Setup breath CCB. Secondary MIDI CC for breath data can be set to any CC between 1 and 127 and can be used together with CCA or on its own with CCA set to off. Setup breath CCB rise. Multiplier to faster reach top value for CCB compared to CCA. For example, if you want to control an amplifier VCA value with CCB and have it reach full value at 25% for full breath, while CCA controls filter VCF cutoff in normal fashion, set the CCB rise to 4 times, 1 to 10 in steps of 1. Setup breath AT. Controls whether or not breath data should be sent as aftertouch, channel pressure. Off indicates no aftertouch breath data is sent. This is the factory default. On indicates breath data is sent as aftertouch. Setup breath velocity. Note velocity can be set to follow the initial breath value dynamically, dyn, or to a fixed value 1 to 127. When a fixed value is used, the velocity sample delay is also bypassed for optimal timing of note on versus rising breath signal. Setup breath curve. This sets the breath sensor to control signal transfer curve. See curve diagram for graphical representation of each curve. -4 to -1 curves are more responsive, faster rising in the lower pressure end. Positive 1 to 4 curves are more responsive, faster rising in the higher pressure end. LIN is a straight linear transfer signal. S curves have faster transition in the middle and is less responsive in the low and high pressure ends. Z curves have a slower transition in the middle and is more responsive in the low and high pressure ends. The LIN curve is the factory default. Setup breath, velocity delay. The time it takes for a tongue note to reach its attack peak is generally about 20 milliseconds. Normally, that's the amount of time the NuRAD waits until it samples the breath pressure level to set note velocity. However, there are situations where we would want to adjust that delay. For example, if we were using a high threshold value for the breath sensor, some of the rising time will occur before the threshold is reached and the delay time starts. Also, if the connected synthesizer is not responding to velocity, setting the delay shorter will increase the response time. Even if the synth responds to velocity, you can experiment with cutting down the delay time and compensating for lower velocity values with the VEL bias setting. Off indicates no velocity sample delay. 1 indicates the lowest delay setting. 20 is the factory default. 30 is the highest delay setting. Setup, breath, velocity boost. This setting helps boosting velocity values, useful for compensating short velocity sample delay settings and for situations where you want to reach high velocity levels faster in relation to breath level. Off indicates velocity bias disabled, which is the factory default. 1 is the lowest setting, 9 is the highest setting. Setup BR, breath interval. Interval between breath messages sent. If your synth is not keeping up with the MIDI stream from your controller, try increasing the interval. Values below 6 milliseconds are not recommended for wireless use, and this is set as default value. Settings go from 3 milliseconds to 15 milliseconds. Setup CTR. Menu for settings related to controllers in general. Setup CTR. Byte CTL sets control destination for byte sensor. Off indicates no destination active for this controller. VIB indicates vibrato. GLD indicates glide or portamento, defined by glide MOD and glide LMT settings. CC indicates custom CC output, defined in byte CC settings. Setup CTR. Byte CC. CC number for byte. Sent if CC is selected in byte CTL. 0 to 127. Setup CTR. Lever CTL. Sets control destination for thumb lever. Off indicates no destination active for this controller. VIB indicates vibrato. GLD indicates glide or portamento, defined by glide MOD and glide LMT settings. CC indicates custom CC output, defined in byte CC settings. Setup CTR, lever CC. CC number for lever, sent if CC is selected in lever CTL, 0 to 127. Setup CTR, glide MOD. Settings for portamento or glide function controlled by the byte sensor. Off indicates no portamento CC data is sent. On indicates portamento time, CC5 is sent. SW indicates portamento time, CC5, and portamento switch, CC65, is sent. This is the default setting. SEL indicates Roland, SEO2 linear mode. SEE indicates Roland SEO2 exponential mode. SWO indicates switching only. CC65 is sent for glide on-off. Setup CTR, glide max. Maximum level for glide amount CC, especially useful when triggering glide with pinky/mod key. Settings 0 to 127. Setup CTR, glide min. Minimum level for glide amount CC. Settings 0 to 127. Setup CTR, vibrato. Menu for vibrato settings. Setup CTR, vibrato depth. Main vibrato level control. Off disables manual vibrato completely. Off indicates vibrato lever disabled. 1 indicates the lowest vibrato depth setting. 9 indicates the highest vibrato depth setting. The factory default is 4. Vibrato depth is also depending on the vibrato sensitivity settings. After fine-tuning the lever and bite sensitivity for a smooth vibrato response, you may want to revisit the depth setting. Set up CTR, vibrato, return. This setting lets you adjust the speed of the automatic return to 0 for the vibrato. Values go from 0 to 4, where 4 is the fastest return and 0 is no automatic return. Example, the vibrato lever will work as a conventional pitch stick. Normal EVI behavior is to auto-return, and the default setting is 2. Setting 0 is not recommended with bite sensor vibrato. Set up CTR vibrato direction. This setting lets you set the direction of the vibrato. For most people, this should be kept to the default setting NRM, normal, where the pitch will fall in response to thumb movement in direction away from the mouthpiece or rise in response to bite when bite sensor is used for vibrato. Setting REV reverse will simply switch directions. Set up CTR, vibrato, sense LVR. This setting controls vibrato lever sensitivity, as individual vibrato sensors may vary in values a bit. This setting will help adjust the sensitivity to get the best result. Setting values go from 1 to 12, where 12 is the most sensitive. Set up CTR, vibrato, squelch L. This setting helps eliminate pitch bend MIDI chatter for when vibrato is not touched and idle. Setting it too high makes the vibrato lever require an unnecessary amount of movement before initiating vibrato. And with the setting too low, the natural sensor noise will cause MIDI chatter around 0. To find the right setting, use a MIDI monitor software on your computer or other device. It should not be showing pitch bend activity when idle, yet be set close enough to this limit to allow good sensitivity when lever is touched slightly. When you are pleased with the setting, press Enter or Menu to save it. Setting values go from 1 to 30, where 12 is the factory default. Set up CTR, vibrato, sense BTE. This setting controls vibrato sensitivity. As individual vibrato sensors may vary in value a bit, this setting will help adjust the sensitivity to get the best result. The settings go from 1 to 12, where 12 is the most sensitive. Set up CTR, vibrato, squelch B. This setting helps eliminate pitch bend MIDI chatter for when bite vibrato is not touched and idle. Setting it too high makes the bite sensor require an unnecessary amount of movement before initiating vibrato. And with the setting too low, the natural sensor noise will cause MIDI chatter around 0. To find the right setting, use a MIDI monitor software on your computer or other device. It should not be showing pitch bend activity when idle. When you are pleased with this setting, press Enter or Menu to save it. Setting values go from 1 to 30, where 10 is the factory default. Set up CTR, EXCT CCA. The extra controller, lip sensor, and/or touchpad can be disabled or set to control transmission of selected MIDI CC data. Off indicates controller is disabled. MW indicates mod wheel CC1 data is sent. Disabled if breath data is sent over CC1. FP indicates foot pedal. CC number 4 data is sent. This is growl on some synth patches, and it is the default setting. CF indicates filter cutoff. CC74 data is sent. SP indicates sustain pedal. CC64. Holds fingered note until controller is released. Set up CTR, EXCT, CCB. Secondary CC value to be sent with the extra controller. Can be sent together with main CC for extra controller, or switched using mod key, see mod key settings, values from 1 to 127, default is off. Set up CTR, EXT, harm. To use the lip sensor extra controller for going through the harmonic series, set this to the range you want. A larger range makes it harder to control as the touch sensitivity of the lip sensor is divided into the number of steps added. Values from 1 to 6, default is off. Set up CTR, Harm SEL. The harmonic series can be set up in a number of ways, going both up, best option for using the lip sensor, or down, useful for example with a custom experimental mouthpiece sensing amount of lip pressed against it. HM1 indicates harmonics 1. HM2 indicates harmonics 2, 7th harmonic not included. 5th indicates fifths and octaves up. OCT indicates octaves up. H1R indicates harmonics 1, down, reversed. H2R indicates harmonics 2, 7th not included, down, reversed. 5TR indicates fifths and octaves, down, reversed. OCR indicates octaves, down, reversed. Set up CTR, deglitch. To reduce glitching when fingers are changed, the deglitching function waits some milliseconds before considering a fingering done and settled. Beginners will probably feel the need to increase the deglitch setting, while virtuoso players could feel the need to reduce the setting. Off indicates deglitching disabled. 1 millisecond is the lowest deglitch setting. 20 milliseconds is the factory default, and 70 milliseconds is the highest deglitch setting. Set up CTR, mod key / pinky key. The mod key, left-hand side key, is the NuRAD equivalent of the NuEVI pinky key. The standard and legacy behavior of the NuEVI pinky key is to set the pitch bend signal to half its value while the key is pressed. In the NuEVI and the NuRAD, we have added the possibility to instead use this key for instant transposition, an adjustable trill key if you like, or as a control for synth volume or portamento, as well as some other functions. -12 indicates 1 octave down when mod key is held. -1 transpose 1 semitone down when mod key is held. PPD, pitch bend divide. Pitch bend and vibrato level is half value when mod key is held. +1 indicates transpose 1 semitone up when mod key is held. +12 indicates transpose 1 octave up when mod key is held. ECB indicates send on off 0 to 127 for CC set in extra controller CCB setting. ECS indicates switch between main and secondary CC to be sent using extra controller. LVL indicates level control, set with first and second right-hand pinky keys on the RAD or the trill keys on the EVI. LVP indicates like above, but current level is transmitted on power up. GLD indicates momentarily sends the set glide limit amount as static glide level. ECH indicates momentary extra controller harmonics activation. QTN indicates quarter tone down using MIDI pitch bend. When setting LVL/LVP, the breath and the glide LEDs crossfade between them to indicate setting. All breath LED is 127 max, and all glide LED is 0 minimum. PBD is factory default pinky setting, as it is the legacy function of this key. Set up CTR, level CC. CC to be sent using pinky key level controls, LVL and LVP. 1 to 127, default is off. Set up CTR, extra pinky key, NuRAD only. Settings for the customizable extra left-hand pinky key, the LHP3. Off indicates the left-hand pinky 3 is disabled. -12 indicates 12 semitones 1 octave down. -1 indicates 1 semitone down. MOD indicates use the left-hand pinky 3 as a secondary mod key, see mod key above. +1 indicates 1 semitone up. +12 indicates 12 semitones 1 octave up. Set up CTR fingering. Selects fingering mode. See separate charts for details on NuRAD fingerings. EWI indicates standard EWI fingering, flexible as it allows all keys to affect pitch at all times. EWX indicates extended EWI fingering. Releasing left hand 1 or touching right hand pinky 3 does an octave shift where applicable, increasing range above and below the octave breaks. Sax indicates saxophone fingering. Keys below relevant specified fingers do not have effect on note selection. Only left hand pinky 2 and right hands are always active for -1 or +1. EVI indicates electric valve instrument fingering adapted for EWI. EVR indicates EVI fingering with reversed octave rollers. On the NuEVI, the fingering menu offers the possibility of reversed roller action or a couple of experimental harmonic series-based settings. EVI indicates EVI fingering. EVR indicates EVI fingerings with reversed roller action. TPT indicates trumpet, experimental. Rollers controlling harmonics, K4 switching between harmonic series version. HRN indicates double horn, experimental. Rollers controlling harmonics, K4 switching between horns. Setup CTR, roller mode. Sets the way the controller handles octave rollers. Mode 1 equals highest touched roller, no release memory, legacy style. Mode 2 equals highest touched roller, release memory, default. Mode 3 equals touched roller pair, release memory. Mode 4 equals touched roller pair, release memory, bonus octave on top. Setup CTR, pitch bend. The pitch bend signal can be divided to work with synthesizers that are not able to set the pitch bend range low enough to fit this kind of instrument. As an example, if a synth has a pitch bend range of 12 semitones up and down, setting the pitch bend divider to 1/12 will limit the range to just a semitone up and down. The off setting will disable the pitch bend pads. Vibrato depth follows the pitch bend divider setting. If the pitch bend pads are disabled, the vibrato will still work at a 1-to-1 range. Off indicates no pitch bend data is sent. 1-to-1 indicates full pitch bend range, which is the factory default. 1/2, half pitch bend range. 1/12, a 12th of the pitch bend range. Adjust. Selecting this menu item enters the sensor adjustment screen. Here you can monitor sensor reading values and change the threshold and maximum sensitivity values for the sensors. Scroll through the various sensors using up and down buttons, then press Enter to move the cursor to threshold and max items, where up and down buttons increase and decrease the values. The indicator bar for the setting is moved right or left. Note that the max setting can never be set lower than the threshold setting. A moving pixel, SNS, indicates the current sensor reading. Where several sensors are involved, a pixel for each sensor will be shown. Also note that the intensive uploading of an OLED display while using the setup menu will interfere with the transmission of MIDI CC data. For that reason, the Adjust menu is to be used for setup only, not to be activated during normal play. To perform an automatic calibration of any sensor page, press Enter and move the cursor to threshold or max bar. Then press up and down buttons simultaneously. Make sure to keep fingers off the sensors when doing this. Adjust breath. Threshold level sets the amount of pressure needed to trigger a note and start sending breath MIDI data. The breath indicator, LED blue, will light up when pressure is over threshold. If the LED is always lit, even when you are not blowing into the mouthpiece, you need to raise the threshold setting until the LED turns off. Max sets the pressure level that should correspond to full signal output. This setting is of course to your individual preference, and with different settings of the breath to signal transfer curve, set up BR to curve, you may want to adjust this too. Adjust lever. Threshold level sets the amount of forward thumb pressure on the lever needed to start sending control data. The portamento indicator, LED red, will light up when the input is over threshold in case the lever is set up to control portamento. If the LED is always lit, even when you are not actuating the lever, you need to raise the threshold setting until the LED turns off. Max sets the actuation level corresponding to full signal output. Adjust touch. Threshold sets the threshold for the keys and the octave rollers. When all keys and rollers are untouched, the SNS dots should all be to the right of the threshold line. Keys touched one at a time, one of the dots should go to the left of the threshold line. This both verifies connectivity and correctly set threshold level. Adjust Lip EC, the extra controller. Activated in the Setup Control menu is the lip or armature sensor on top of the mouthpiece. It is a proportional touch controller working much in the same fashion as the pitch bend pads. Threshold sets the threshold for the lip touch sensor. Make sure the SNN indicator dot is to the left of the threshold line when the sensor is not touched. Max sets the lip touch corresponding to full controller signal output. Adjust Bend. Threshold sets the threshold for the pitch bend touchpads. Make sure both of the SNS indicator dots are to the left of the threshold line, or you will have issues with your pitch bend signal. Max sets the amount of finger pressure against pitch bend touchpads required for full signal output. When adjusting this setting, move your thumb up and down on the pads to find a good setting. Note that what should be sent as a full pitch bend signal is controlled in the Setup Control Pitch Bend menu. The sensor max setting should always be set so the SNN reading is reaching the max line when the pads are fully touched. Adjust Bite. Threshold level sets the amount of bite or bend action on the mouthpiece needed to start sending portamento control data. The portamento indicator, LED, red, will light up when bite input is over threshold in case the bite sensor is set up to control portamento. If the LED is always lit, even when you are not biting or bending the mouthpiece, you need to raise the threshold setting until the LED turns off. If NuBite system is installed, remember to press the valve button before calibration and put the thresh level a bit higher than just right of the idle sensor reading to have some margin for rising value due to temperature change. Max sets the bite or bending level corresponding to full portamento signal output. When using bite for vibrato, the bite adjustment is not relevant, but the SNS dot can still be a good indicator to check proper bite sensor response. Typical settings. Note that for the touch sensor adjustment, the threshold bar is to the left of the sensor dot cluster, as the values go lower when the sensors are touched. For the other sensors, the dots move right on actuation, and the threshold and max bars should be on the right of idle reading sensor dots. Extras, various settings. Extras, Legacy PB, on-off switching for the legacy instant controls where both pitch benders are used. See Legacy Controls section. Extras, Legacy BR, on-off switching for the legacy instant controls where negative breath is used. See Legacy Controls section. Extras, Gate Hold, setting to disable the gate hold functionality to avoid accidental activation. See Gate Hold sections for details on using the gate hold function. Extras, Third Trill, NuEVI. This setting controls the behavior of the third trill key. Available options are +3 or +4 semitones. +4 is the default setting. As a hidden extra, the interval that is not selected here can be achieved by touching the third valve key and the third trill key at the same time. A mechanical modification making this practical is to mount a metal lip onto the trill key, making it protrude just above and behind the third valve key. Extras, BCAS mode. This setting changes the behavior of the legacy instant controls to not require touching pitch bend up for patch change. Only has effect when legacy breath is on. Extras, DAC out. This setting controls the DAC output channel. The available options are BRTH indicates output the breath sensor signal. PTCH indicates output pitch with octave. For NuEVI Plus, NuEVI CV, or standard NuEVI or NuRAD with CV box or module, the pitch option should be selected. Extras, battery type. To have battery voltage monitoring correctly representing the battery type used in the controller, use the corresponding setting. ALK indicates alkaline batteries, 100% at 4.6 volts, low battery at 3.8 volts. NMH indicates NIMH rechargeable batteries, 100% at 3.9 volts, low battery at 3.6 volts. LP1 indicates LiPo rechargeable battery, 100% at 4.3 volts, low battery at 3.7 volts. LP2 indicates LiPo with revised wiring. This setting allows indication of charge status in menu and about screen. Extras, fast boot. Enabling this setting will make the NuEVI start up as fast as possible when powered on. Extras, fast patch. This setting enables the use of the FastPatch function. See section on FastPatch Selection. Extras, CV tune. Tuning the CV output for 1 volt per octave when using NuEVI CV, NuEVI Plus, or NuEVI/NuRAD with external CV box or module. Modules usually ship with a suggested tune value to enter here. Extras, CV scale. Scaling of the CV output for 1 volt per octave when using NuEVI CV, NuEVI Plus, or the NuEVI or NuRAD with external CV box or module. Modules usually ship with a suggested tuned value to enter here. Extras, CV, EC, LFO. The CV, EC, LFO setting controls the CV, LFO vibrato function for the extra controller lip sensor. It can be set to off, no extra controller LFO vibrato, or values 1 through 8, which represent vibrato frequencies from 4.5 Hz to 8 Hz. Default value is 5.5 Hz. Extras, WL power. To set the radio power of the optimal MIDI beam wireless kit, select a value in the menu and press enter. This should be done with the wireless receiver linked up. Steady glowing LEDs on TX and RX. The available values are 0, -6, -12, and -18 decibel milliwatts. 0 is the highest setting, and this is the setting in the MIDI beam. NuEVI does not store the setting. It is only kept in the MIDI beam, so the menu will always start on 0 when selected. Extras, WL channel. To set the radio channel of the MIDI beam wireless transmitter, select a value in this menu and press enter. Available values are 4 to 80. After changing this, the transmitter and receiver will need to be paired again as the connection will be lost. Note that this is just an initial channel that the MIDI beam will use. During pairing, it'll determine what the best channel is. The value is not stored by the NuEVI, so the menu will always start at 4, the default MIDI beam channel. Before changing any of the wireless settings, please read through the MIDI beam user guide describing these settings. This is available at pandamidi.com/support. Patch selection. Pressing the Enter button when the display is off will show the currently selected patch number on the display for a couple seconds. Pressing up or down changes the patch number. You can hold the button pressed to get a faster scrolling through the numbers. Pressing the up and down button when the display is switched off will directly enter the patch view mode and step the patch number up or down. The patch number will be remembered by the controller even when powered off. Holding Enter button while powering up the NuEVI or NuRAD will have it send a program change for the current patch selected. FastPatch Selection. You can store up to 7 patch numbers that can be instantly recalled by holding a combination of trill keys on the NuEVI or the left hand 1, left hand 2, and left hand 3 keys in the NuRAD. When pressing any of the buttons, enter up or down from the display sleep or patch view state. Just reach with your left hand thumb without looking. If no patch number is stored for the selected memory slot, the selection will be ignored, and the current patch number will be displayed. To use this function, first make sure it is enabled in the Extras FastPatch setting. It is disabled by factory default. To save a patch number into a memory slot, use up and down to select the patch you want to store. No Trill keys touched. From Display Sleep, finger the key combination you want to use as memory slot. Press and hold Menu, then immediately press Enter while holding Menu. The display will briefly indicate that the FastPatch has been set. To clear a FastPatch memory slot, finger the key combination for the slot. Press and hold Menu, then immediately press Up while still holding Menu. The display will briefly indicate that the FastPatch slot has been cleared. Mind that accidentally touching Trill keys or left-hand keys when using Up, Down, or Enter for patch selection will recall a FastPatch, or just display the current patch if no FastPatch is set for that slot. So keep fingers off the Trill keys if you're just doing regular patch selection. Should a situation of stuck notes occur, a MIDI panic or all notes off can be sent by pressing and holding the Enter button, then pressing the Menu button while still holding Enter from display off state. Big friendly letters on the display will also tell you not to panic. Special key. Introduced with the Steiner MIDI EVI, the special key added the possibility to play chords and intervals. This has been implemented in the NuEVI and the NuRAD too. On NuRAD, the special key has been divided into two keys to be touched at the same time to lessen the risk of accidental activation. To use the special key functions, make sure Poly Mode in the Poly Play menu is not set to off. The first function is Slur Sustain. To activate this, touch the special key while holding a finger on left-hand pinky key 1 for the NuRAD or K4 on the NuEVI ARC key, fourth valve. Slur Sustain will send a sustain hold pedal on command when a note is tongued. Keep it held as long as new notes are slurred, building chords by slurring and holding them until breath is released. A new chord can then be started by tonguing a new note. The latest chord or interval played will be stored for use with the parallel chord or interval function. Parallel chord or interval is activated by touching the special key while holding right-hand pinky key 1 on the NuRAD or K5 on the NuEVI, the first Trill key. If no chord or interval has been stored by Slur Sustain, a default interval of a perfect fifth below the played note is used. Activating Slur Sustain will switch the parallel chord function off, and any intervals or chords slurred will then overwrite the previously stored chord. The sub-octave double function is activated by touching the special key while holding right-hand pinky key 2 for the NuRAD or K1 on the NuEVI, first valve. This adds a note played one octave down from the played note. This can be used in combination with Slur Sustain or parallel chord functions. A new addition to the special key function is Slur Sostenuto. It is activated by touching the special key while holding left-hand pinky key 2 on the NuRAD or K2 on the NuEVI, second valve. When activated, first note or chord will be locked in by MIDI sostenuto pedal and sound as long as following notes are slurred. Note that not all synthesizers support MIDI sostenuto. The slur sostenuto can be combined with parallel chord, sub-octave double, or harmonizer/rotator. Last but not least, there is the configurable Poly Play function. That is activated by touching/holding the mod key on the NuRAD or pinky key on the NuEVI, and then touching the special key. In the Poly Play menu, you can set this up to a number of alternative harmonizers and rotators. See the settings section for Poly Play for all the different options here. When in any of these polyphonic modes, the orange LED on the teensy will be flashing instead of glowing steadily. Touching only the special keys will switch off any active special key functions. Gate hold. A trick for getting smooth attacks on some synths, where you don't need velocity values, is to keep notes always on and control the volume/filter with breath only. A way to do this is to change the breath threshold value to be just slightly below the idle reading. This is a bit unpractical though, so we put in a little bonus thing to make it easier. First, make sure gate hold settings in the extras menu is on, then continue below. To activate the gate hold on the NuEVI, grab the canister like a doorknob, touching the side key and the bottom 3 rollers at the same time. Then touch the pitch bend up pad. On NuRAD, fold your thumb in to reach over all the uppermost rollers and touch pitch bend up pad. The teensy LED will flicker fast to indicate activation, then keep flashing until deactivated. To deactivate gate hold, do the same thing, but with touching the pitch bend down pad. The LED will flicker 3 times to confirm. Legacy Instant Controls. The MIDI EVI was using fingering combinations to alter settings and send patch change commands. For advanced users, this can still be a desired thing, so there's support in the NuEVI for the most important parts. Set this functionality on and off. Default is off using the Legacy PB setting in the Extras menu. When the Legacy Instant Controls are activated, you can instantly recall a patch number by its respective MIDI note number. For example, by fingering middle C, while not playing, you are selecting patch number 72. Any transpositions set are not active here. Touch both pitch bend pads at the same time to send the patch change command for the patch number you are fingering. The teensy LED will flash once to confirm. Note that if the patch number is already the patch known as active in the NuEVI or NuRAD, the command will not be sent. To select patch numbers in the top and bottom end of the range, 1 to 127, add the pinky/mod key to your fingering. Using MIDI channel switching can be useful for switching between synths or patches in performances. To instantly select a MIDI channel number, you can finger it using middle C and upwards chromatically, where middle C represents MIDI channel number 1. Touch the lip sensor with your lip, then touch both pitch bend pads at the same time. The teensy LED will flash once to confirm. Note that a MIDI setting selected this way will not be remembered after powering off, unless you go to the MIDI channel menu to confirm the change. This way, if you have no idea why you suddenly can't get a sound because you accidentally managed to switch to some other MIDI channel, a power cycle will get you back in business. Another way to trigger the instant controls is to apply a gentle sucking negative air pressure to the mouthpiece while touching pitch bend up instead of touching both pitch bend pads. To activate this functionality, go to Legacy BR setting in the Extras menu. Using the sucking together with pitch bend down, Nyle has added the Legacy Program button control, see below. Yet another alternative way for patch number selection is to finger the number like above, then lock it in by momentarily touching the pinky key. Send MIDI range values by touching first valve and first trill keys at the same time. Top and bottom range values by touching second valve and second trill key at the same time. Nyle's program button functions. I have added the equivalent of the vintage MIDI EVI programming button. It is activated by holding down the pitch bend and sucking. The Legacy Breath Activate feature must be on for this to work. Implemented so far. Number 1. Middle octave position, C72. Ability to assign MIDI breath parameters, MIDI volume, MIDI aftertouch, MIDI breath, and MIDI expression and velocity. First valve indicates MIDI volume. Second valve indicates MIDI aftertouch. Third valve indicates MIDI breath controller. Side button, fourth valve, indicates MIDI expression. First trill key indicates note on velocity. Number 2, lowest octave position, C36. Ability to increment or decrement and send MIDI patch change commands. F29 indicates decrement and send patch change. G31 indicates increment and send patch change. E28 indicates subtract 10 and send patch change. F#30 indicates add 10 and send patch change. When NuEVI is turned on, increment to decrement starts from whatever patch number is stored in the EEPROM. Third valve indicates send reverb amount CC91, value determined by pinky pitch latch. C36 equals 0. Vintage EVI never had this reverb send feature. I put it in here just because my own setup takes advantage of it. I still want to add a C36 open with no keys, all notes off command, but have not done it yet. Pinky pitch latch works exactly the same as it does on the vintage MIDI EVI. When not blowing, just press pinky key momentarily while holding a note fingering. The note and octave position will determine a value and store it in RAM memory latch. This value can then be assigned to a parameter using the programming button. Calling patch changes randomly by fingering is not part of this programming button feature and does not use the pitch latch. You simply suck with no pitch bend applied and a patch is sent according to which note you are holding. This simulates the missing patch change button that is also on the vintage MIDI EVI. Nyle. Pitch bend pad adjustment. The pitch bend pads can be loosened using a screwdriver and slightly shifted in distance from the thumb rest. Find the placement that makes the most sense to you and then tighten the screws. Don't over-tighten, as you could cause damage to the conductive plastic of the pitch bend pads if you do. If the pad is not moving or wiggling when pressed against the thumb rest position, you should be good to go. Pinky key adjustment, NuRAD. The pinky keys can also be loosened with a Phillips screwdriver and rotated into favored positions. They can also be replaced with slightly longer or shorter keys, thinner or wider ones, or blind keys if you want to remove a key that you're not using. The keys are printed in a conductive PLA plastic from a parametric 3D model, where these values can easily be altered for printing of custom-sized keys. The design file will be available for free on demand if you want to print your own keys, or Berglund Instruments can supply these keys already printed. Battery check. When the main menu is activated, the battery voltage will be indicated top right of the display. Values over 4.9 volts will indicate that the instrument is powered over USB, and below that will indicate it is battery voltage. Normal voltage for a set of new alkaline batteries will be about 4.6 volts. The value will drop as the batteries are being used, giving a hint of the current battery condition. Below 3.8 volts, they are due to be replaced, and the indicator will say battery low. If you are using NiMH rechargeable batteries or the optional LiPo built-in rechargeable battery, change the battery type setting in the Extras menu to corresponding type. This will set the right threshold value for battery low indication, 3.6 volts for the NiMH and 3.7 volts for the LiPo. Going into the About menu, you will also see the set battery type and a rough approximation of remaining battery percentage. Battery replacement, AAA and AA. With the NuRAD and the NuEVI switched off and disconnected from USB or DIN MIDI, unscrew the frontmost thumb screw on top of the controller and loosen the one at the back of the battery compartment slightly. Slide the lid forward and lift it off the controller. Replace the batteries, 3 AAA, 3 AA, alkaline or NiMH type, and slide the lid back into place. Get the front thumb screw in place first, then tighten both screws. Only finger gripping power should be applied. Do not use pliers or similar tools or you'll most certainly scratch the plastics of your instrument. Firmware updates. Updates for the NuRAD and the NuEVI firmware are supplied in a .hex format when new features or bug fixes are released. The current firmware version is shown in the NuRAD and the NuEVI display while powering on. Firmware upload is done using a software tool called Teensy Loader. It can be downloaded from www.pjrc.com/teensy/loader.html, where you also find instructions for using the Teensy Loader to upload the .hex file. To restart the NuRAD or the NuEVI in program mode, making it visible to the Teensy software, press all 4 buttons by the display simultaneously while the display is not active, or open the case slightly and press the program button on the Teensy. If you get a message in the Teensy Loader app that the hex file you selected is too big, just ignore it and put your instrument in program mode. The board version will be recognized and the hex file can be uploaded. If the app is in auto mode, it will upload as soon as you get the instrument in program mode. Otherwise, you'll need to click Program and Reboot after the Teensy chip has been recognized and the Teensy picture in the app has gone from faded to normal. Firmware update releases for NuEVI and NuRAD, they are separate .hex files for update, are found at github.com/TRASSELFRISYR/NuEVI/releases. Factory Restore. Only if you're sure this is what you need to do. To restore the factory default settings, including sensor adjustments, hold the Enter and Menu buttons when switching on the NuRAD. Do not touch keys or sensors. Release buttons when the orange LED glows steadily. Make sure you take notes or take photos of settings and sensor adjustments before doing this. Your sensor calibrations will be off target when reset, and you have to set them right if you want a well-performing controller. Note that some older instructions for firmware update mentions doing a factory reset. This is not needed anymore and should better be avoided. Fingering charts for the NuRAD and the NuEVI are located on pages 50 through 52. Troubleshooting tips. Problem. Intermittent small pitch bend messages are sent, especially when blowing into the mouthpiece. Solution. The vibrato squelch is set too tight. Up the settings value a step or two. Also check pitch bend adjustment setting and make sure the idle sensor readings are not above the threshold line. Problem. When using the optional wireless kit, some keys don't respond properly. Solution. With the handle loop removed and no natural ground through a cable, the lesser amount of reference grounding may be affecting the capacitive touch readings. Make sure you keep your thumb on the thumb lever and the metal strip on the roller assembly while playing wirelessly for better response. Both are ground points. On NuEVI, ground points are the thumb lever and the canister, bottom or grounding square. Also check the touch sense adjustments and maybe try bringing the threshold bar closer to the cluster of dots. You can use the touch sensor dots to monitor the touch response of each key and roller to see how they respond with and without grounding. Problem. I'm getting dropouts and hung notes when playing, or it stops sending MIDI completely. Solution. Check your battery level and make sure you have fresh batteries. Problem. When using wireless MIDI, the patches start randomly changing or notes get dropped or connection is lost with the receiver LED blinking. Solution. Batteries are getting low and not providing enough current for the transmission bursts. This can happen before battery low is indicated for some battery types. Switch to fresh, good quality batteries. Try repairing the MIDI beam, set to find a channel with less interference. To enter pairing mode on the NuRAD, swipe a magnet over the area where the red MIDI beam LED is seen. On NuEVI, open the top just enough to reach the blue pairing button on the MIDI beam transmitter. Problem. Byte vibrato or portamento stopped working since last time and I didn't do anything. Solution. Ambient air pressure has probably changed since, shifting the byte sensor input out of range. Press the little valve button under the byte sensor tube where it enters the housing to equalize the pressure. It's a good idea to do this every playing session, just to make sure it's right. Problem. Using CV on NuEVI Plus, NuEVI CV, or standard NuEVI or the NuRAD. With CV box or module, both CV jacks send breath CV. Solution. Check DAC mode setting in Extras menu. It should be set to pitch, not breath.